Hi, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours, where we answer your media and production questions 7 days a week. Bill Davis is our reader for today. Bill, what's our first question?
Francis Fry from Cambridge, Massachusetts comes in first on this one. On a very large Zoom meeting that I host, I want to record one person's isolated video feed with their permission. I'm not looping the feedback into the meeting. If ZoomISO does this, what's the simplest setup?
Go ahead, Mickey.
ZoomISO alone cannot record. It's only able to pull feeds in from a Zoom event, be it a meeting or a webinar, or a Zoom event platform event. But you still need to feed that isolated feed to a recorder. Knowing Francis has a bunch of hyperdecks and also decklink cards, you can feed SDI out of ZoomISO and feed it to one of your hyperdecks and record the ISO that way. If you want an all-in-one system, I would probably go with the Zoom integration built into vMix or perhaps eCam, and you can record within vMix or record within eCam that isolated feed that you're pulling from the meeting. If ever you do need to do multi-channel recordings out of a Zoom meeting, I would probably go with a Zoom Room pulling NDI feeds, or even ZoomISO pulling NDI feeds, and feed that into an application like LiveMind that can do, I believe, up to 16 channels of NDI recording if you need to do multiple channels. But on the simpler setup, I'd go vMix or eCam.
Chris?
I passed. No, I'm kidding. We joked about that before the show. For instance, you mentioned the simplest setup, and Mickey's right. ZoomISO doesn't let you record, it just lets you feed it to a thing. Honestly, although there are downsides to doing it, what I'm going to say, it really is the simplest. Clearly, you have extra gear laying around. Set up another machine. Just ISO them. What's it called? Pin them. Just do a pin farm screen scrape and just hit record. You didn't say you needed to isolate the audio, just the video. That's what I would do. I'd just be done with it and move on. Solve the next problem.
Next question.
Andy Kokendorfer in Viera, Florida is up next. How do you get novice Zoom presenters to comprehend the importance of intelligibility?
Jason.
I use recording. I just play themselves back to them, and that usually does it.
Jeff?
Jason got it. Pass.
Jeff?
And I'll just say, this is almost like asking, how do you make a video go viral? If you knew the recipe to do that, you would do that right away. So yes, playing it back to them. And I would just stress, some very, very basic things, especially maybe if they happen to be a fast talker, just a few key simple bullet points, talk slower than you normally do, speak up, don't garble your words, just a few of those bullet points, plus reinforcing that with playing themselves. And one other thing is, if you have one or two examples that maybe really highlight a really good example of someone that perhaps they can think about.
Bill?
Yeah, you've gotten a whole bunch of good suggestions there. Since I work with a lot of people nowadays who are not professionals but want to get into the business, I will say also that occasionally it's the things that add intelligibility, the ability to hear soft and simple sounds like THs and S's and things like that, fricatives, and not – sometimes a different mic will make a little bit of difference in terms of intelligibility. If somebody doesn't have – crisp articulation, a really smart and talented audio engineer can sometimes boost things a little bit to help them. That is not a substitute. And I do subscribe to the idea to sit down and very benignly say, look, we really want to hear everything you're saying. Your content is really important. So can you please slow down a little bit and be careful about what you say. If you can get into their heads and help them a little bit without shutting them down, but you have to be very careful about that, particularly with amateurs. If you give them too much criticism, and people have managed this, sometimes you can just push them further into their shell and they'll be worse rather than better.
Courtney?
Well, what you do is you sit them down and you force them to watch every Betty Davis movie. because Betty Davis pronounced every single syllable in the line. And she was not a very beautiful actress. She was okay looking in her early days, but she maintained her stardom way into her 80s. And I credit her elocution and her ability to be intelligible all the way into her 80s.
Chris.
Bill, what the fricative is a fricative?
Fricative? Oh, okay.
So
I was going to actually define it, but
I totally agree about recording. I think also to borrow an Alex Lindsay strategy, guilt and shame. When you're testing people, when you're inviting them to the first meeting, everybody on your team should have best practices in order, so that when that one person, shows up and they're too low in the frame and they're too far away and you can't hear them, that they look and they sound bad. And then, yes, the record. I was in a meeting once with a producer, and during the meeting, I couldn't understand literally half of what she was trying to say. And so very quietly, I hit record on it. And at the end of the meeting, I said, hey, can you stay a few minutes later? She goes, yeah. And I said, I just want to show this to you because I know you care, but you probably are not aware. This is what you sound like during the meeting. She's like, oh my God, I had no idea. And she changed it right away. So yeah, guilt and shame and showing people what the result is.
And Chris brings up a really smart strategy in how to approach the soft skills, the people part of it, because it's really about, you don't want that person to shut down. You want that person to improve. And so if you remember why we're here in the first place, the why we're here is because we're trying to communicate a message. The reason that we're all in this room, the reason we're all in this meeting is because you have a message that you're trying to get across to people. And that message doesn't mean anything if they can't understand what it is. Now, you may have been in a lot of meetings before, but the difference was you didn't have me, whoever you're talking to. It's not me, CJ, but you, right? When you're talking to that client and you're saying, you didn't have me before, and you're really living in the lap of luxury right now because my job is to make sure that you look and sound good. And you may have been in another meeting before where you didn't have me, and here's what the people weren't telling you. And then you say, from my ear, these are the things that you can do to really take it to the next level. And when that person who you're supporting feels that you're supporting them in that way, and they have a comfort level, I think not only are they going to respect you giving a frank opinion on something that maybe they don't want to hear, but also you're going to make sure that they have the confidence to go through and execute and perform. Next question.
Next one comes to us from Jeff Francis in Columbia, South Carolina, here on the panel. AMP-ISO series creates a resolved project that allows easy re-edits, but it's 1080. How do I create this functionality in 4K?
Come on, Blackmagic. We want the ATEM Mini Pro 4K. Bring it in, Mickey.
So yeah, if you are using Blackmagic design cameras, the same timecode that's embedded into the ATEM Mini Pro recording is also written to the camera, the in-camera recorded media. So what you could do is you could reconnect the camera material and replace the footage that's on the timeline with the full 4K, 6K, 12K, whatever Blackmagic design footage is recorded. If you're not using Blackmagic design cameras, you can, in a very convoluted way, de-embed the timecode from the ATEM Mini Pro's, one of the ATEM Mini Pro's outputs, and then jam your cameras with that timecode. There will be a slight latency there, so you would need to offset the footage when you bring it into an NLE, but you would be able to replace the footage with timecode, and you will retain the cuts that you created on the line cut that you created on the day.
Bill?
Yeah, I don't remember, Jeff, if you're using Final Cut or not, but there is a little wonderful little thing called compound clips in Final Cut, and sometimes I have originally put my low-res version of that into it, worked with compound clips to cut the piece later, and then can substitute a higher frame rate video into that, and everything will just ripple through your timeline. I don't know if this is addressing what you need. It sparked that. It's kind of cool that some NLEs now have a container that you can use and just replace it later, and it'll ripple through your whole timeline, and that low-res stuff will get replaced with high-res stuff inside your edit.
So in other words, the source video that's on your timeline is the compound clip. And so, but then by later going in and replacing what is inside that compound clip, you've effectively done almost a proxy replace.
Yeah,
just
you've replaced everything
inside. That's a neat
inside.
way to go about that. Jeff Francis.
Yeah, Bill. So this is talking about not an edit, but a live switch.
So then you can't do that.
So Mickey, I knew about the trick with Blackmagic cameras that you can drop in that with timecode. I'm wondering if you could, has anybody used a 1080 ATEM Extreme and a bank of 4K recorders that records all of the individual files and replace those files instead? If you're using, say a PTZ that does not have onboard camera recording, if you take all your video feeds and go into a bank of 8, hyperdecks or something that's going to capture all of those with timecode, it's a little bit more convoluted. Come on,
Jeff?
Blackmagic, give us the 4K version.
Jeff Cohen?
That is convoluted, so I'm not going to touch that, but I will follow up on what Bill said. Yes, in fact, you can also do, in Resolve, you can do nested timelines. So even a little bit more sophisticated. So in other words, you can have a timeline, and then that drops as an item on a track in a parent timeline to do the same thing you're talking about. And so I've built out templates specifically for this so that, because I do have the need sometimes to, down the road, replace the source file, and that's the easiest way, because there isn't a great way if
right,
you
so
have.
That's a way to do it with almost as a proxy workflow, but it'd be tricky to get that it'd be tricky to do that in the switched file that comes out, right?
Yeah. Not addressing the live issue, just follow up on what Bill said as it applies to Resolve. That yes, you can do that, and it's super handy.
Chris?
Mr. Francis, I could have sworn that there was the capability of swapping out with the camera master. So you could record in the camera at 4K. I could have sworn, I'm not a fan of Resolve, as you know, but
that's what Mickey was talking about.
Yeah, that there was a way that you could just take those camera masters and swap it out, and it had some magic voodoo. And can you not take, I know that sometimes it's tricky, and again, can you not just take a timeline and say, change the resolution of this timeline to 4K and then repoint to different media? It seems like it would be possible. I'm sorry I don't have an answer. I'm just confused, because I could have sworn that they said that was a capability when this feature first came out.
Courtney?
Yeah, I think at that point you'll just need timecode, and then potentially have to deal with the issue that your ATEM capture, remember your ATEM is frame syncing everything. So there could be drift over, a 2-hour program.
Yep.
Courtney?
I believe in the Blackmagic, when they create that edit file, when they create that compound resolve file, they apply timecode at the encode. So I think it doesn't use the camera's original timecode. I think it applies it. I think the original cameras have to be jam synced to a common timecode so that they have the same relationship to each other. But then they come in as 1080p H.264, or they're recorded as H.264. If you're looking to store the 4K in RAW format, that's going to take recording of the cameras and timecode to resync them in post to relate them back to the original switch, which is an H.264. So you want that H.265 feature on a switcher like the 4Ks that actually have 4K inputs.
Maggie?
Yeah, just to add to what has been discussed, the DRT files, the DaVinci Resolve timeline files that are generated by the ATEM Mini switchers, do reference timecode that is generated by the highly inaccurate clock built into Blackmagic design products, the switcher. And if you're using Blackmagic design cameras, the cameras are forced to take that timecode. There is no option to switch it around. There's no option to take timecode from an accurate clock. They all master, or they all, okay, we don't use the word slave now. They all are clients of the ATEM Mini Pro's timecode generator. So if you have other recording devices that have to jam to timecode, say multi-track audio recorders, other cameras that have that have the capability to switch to another timecode source, things would definitely would drift off out of sync there. If you're using not other cameras that aren't Blackmagic design cameras, then at least you have the option to change your timecode source. But yeah, the DRT files do reference the timecode generated by the ATEM minis.
Next question.
Next one comes to us from Zach Stallsmith in Chautauqua, New York. And Zach wonders, is there a way to send stable audio between two different sites using Dante or NDI and be able to mix the audio on a console? This is mostly just to keep testing out different workflows, so it's not mission critical.
Go ahead, Jeff.
So you don't specify how many channels, but if you need multi-channels, Audio Mover's Listen To is a great option, 128 channels. And then the other one is Unity Intercom Connect, which is not Unity Intercom, but it's a multi-channel send between it. I'm sure Mickey's got a lot of info about that coming at us.
Mickey?
Yeah, because who's this? Zach specifically mentioned Dante and NDI. There is a product from Audinate called Dante Connect, which allows you to connect multiple sites together with Dante audio and video through the public internet, through the WAN. You would probably want to, it's not designed to be run on-prem, but to run in the cloud. So you may want to bounce it off the cloud. I haven't tried it with fully on-prem workflows yet or pipelines yet. And on the NDI side of things, there's of course NDI Bridge, which allows you to, as it says here, connect remotely over WAN. So those are solutions specifically in the Dante world, the NDI world. But I personally prefer to use either, as Jeff Francis mentioned, Unity Connect, which allows you to transport 64 channels of audio to and from various locations, as well as SRT. SRT, if you specifically mentioned stable audio, SRT.
Next question.
Next one comes to us from Douglas Carmichael. Has anyone had experience with transcription apps, like ProdCom, which transcribes comms in real time?
ProdCom, I'll be frank, the premise of this makes me nervous just just talking about it. Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, I have played around with ProdCom, and it's neat because you can send or trigger OSC messages to be sent out or MIDI messages to be sent out when ProdCom, the application, detects a certain keyword. So you can say have a keyword trigger like flashing on your mixing console lights or something like that, so that you can be notified visually when you're, say, being called on comms or something. There's a fire that needs to be put out. You can send OSC messages out or MIDI messages out to have something do something. So I've only played around with it. I don't really have a true use case for it in production, but it's an interesting tool to keep in the tool bag.
Bill?
I will only buy this if it has a mute all swearing function. I just want to put that on the record.
Courtney?
Yeah, most people are nervous. with comms even being recorded, much less transcribed and printed out in something that can be used in a court of law. This is very dangerous. I would not promote that. Plus, as far as Mickey's idea of Mickey's idea of triggering certain things based on vocal commands, as we all know from the people that have the Alexas in the room, that can be very dangerous. If just common speech, somebody mentions one of the trigger words, it could upset your entire show,
Chris?
This sounds like a solution to a problem that shouldn't exist. When engineers try and solve wetware problems, you just get ridiculous. This just sounds dumb. Hire professionals, teach them how to talk on comms. If they don't know how to talk on comms, don't hire them. Stop the background chatter. Pay attention. Be professional. This sounds ridiculous.
Jeff?
I'm an expert in ridiculous. Have a question, but for Mickey, real quick, because that's really interesting. But Bill, I like your idea. But what I would do is have it replace those words with funny words, the swear words. But Mickey,
Like
to do the trick, right? Mickey, to do the triggering, does that mean each person is running that software on their local system to do the triggering?
Mickey?
You just hook up an audio interface to a computer, and however many channels you want to feed that audio interface, it could be broken up into different. I guess it looks like a chat box. So yeah, just however many channels you feed into that interface, you can. You just take a Dante output or a 4-wire or a 2-wire output out of your comp system, feed it into your computer. But yeah, for myself, for example, when I'm mixing live, I do not keep a comms headset on. I typically make sure that I'm given a comms telephone with a light on it that people can trigger and call, and I would pick up that phone and jump on the comms that way during the show. So for me, having an option where I don't need that specific intercom telephone, and I can just have something trigger like via OSC, a light goes on, and I can throw the headset on if someone's calling me. That could be useful.
Yeah, a ton of potential for a tool like this to be used in those situations where you don't want to be on comms or you need to have a visual cue. But again, it's all going to depend on what's the crew that you have, what's their level of professionalism, what's their level of discipline, because especially when things start to get stressful, that's where some of the couth goes out the window, we'll call it that. Next question.
Andy Kokendorfer in Viera, Florida. Up next, what are your best practices for condenser mic placement for Zoom presenters? Distance, angle, and so forth. Thanks.
Jeff?
I'll just mention one that I come across a lot, and I'll let others, I'm sure, have plenty of great ideas, but that is to base the position of the mic relative to other people. For instance, it's at a podcast table, let's say. And what I see a lot is from recordings I get to edit of clients, they'll have it positioned just fine. But it turns out that the person they look at most often is on the other side. So they turn to look at that person, and then they're completely off mic. So that's just one simple thing, is just orient it accordingly.
Jeff?
So I'm going to remind you that your room really matters. So treatment of the room is really important. And then it works good to have, you'll notice that several of us on here have our mics slightly off center so that the actual blast of our air coming out of our mouth goes past the microphone. And that's going to cut down on plosives and those kind of things.
Mickey?
I think the first thing I would say is listen. Listen to what sounds good. No matter what we say, if it doesn't work for the environment or the specific situation, then it won't sound good. So listen. Second would be anticipate. If a person is a big hand talker, don't put the microphone in, or the stand or the arm in the way of their hands. So yeah, listen and anticipate.
Courtney?
I like the arrangement like I have mine right now, out of the frame, but directly in front of me. If I bring my microphone up, you'll see that the element is facing me. I have it tilted up slightly so that when it's lowered down, it's still facing kind of up my nose and at my mouth. And I have a pop filter on it, which handles the plosives that a lot of people are worried about. That's why they move the mics off to the side. So I let the pop filter handle the plosives, and I still don't have that problem because if I turn to the left or the right, since it's in the center, I don't go off mic as much as if it were to one side. Also, I hate it when the microphone is up here in front of their mouths because on a Zoom call, sometimes you have to take a cue to know who's talking if you don't recognize the voice. And if their mouth is blocked by the microphone, sometimes you can't tell who's speaking. So I like a good visual cue of seeing their lips flapping to know who's talking to me. So that's how I like it. And I think actually the voice sounds better in front of the chest from below as opposed to overhead because I think there's a lot of resonance that comes out of the sinuses and comes down, and you lose that if you put the mic above. So I think you get a little richer sound as long as the nasal passages are open if you put it from underneath.
Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, I just want to emphasize what Mickey said about the room being important, particularly for people who are doing Zoom presentations and are not professionals, because in most cases, if you're working out of any space that is not well treated, there can be all sorts of reflections. I mean, I remember somebody that I was working with who had their mic down and pointed up, and it turns out that their plaster ceiling and the wall behind them were creating a really nasty mess, and they always sounded brittle and hollow because of that. So you really have to take into consideration more than one thing. It's a recipe for each individual, and don't discount room treatment because without at least something there, the way a parallel box room sounds can often be not pleasant.
Mickey.
Yeah, and I think it's also important to mention that I believe most of the folks that answered on the panel that answered the question were talking about large diaphragm condenser microphones. And there are many, many types and form factors for condenser microphones. So learn the specific microphone that you're using, its pickup pattern, and how it reacts to the room and the specific voice that you're trying to capture.
And Chris?
So I have to say, Courtney, I moved my microphone down. I think when you lifted your mic up, I could clearly hear the difference. But I do think that your voice, we've all said Courtney's got a great voice, always had from day one, the first day we met you. But very interesting about the resonance from the chest. I've never thought about that. I do, now that I think about it, I do think the boom guys try to point it kind of chest, right? But I realize now I have to gain up my mic. I don't know, how's this sound, Mickey, if I put my mic in the Courtney position?
Putting me on the spot, but yeah, it sounds less full,
you
I guess thinner.
You weren't paying attention. I got it. Okay, never mind.
No, it is slightly thinner.
You hear a little more of the room. That's the only difference.
Yeah.
And that's what I always get.
I'm going to split the difference.
The biggest thing that I think anyone can do is to listen to themselves, and not on side tone, but listen to themselves after the fact. We have a great benefit of being on office hours is that you can hear how your room sounds when you're not talking if you go back and put yourself through listening to yourself. So have someone record their meeting, but just themselves. Get an audio hijack or something like that and record just your microphone input during one of your Zoom calls. And then after the fact, they can go back and say, okay, hey, what did that sound like? Because you can always, fire up QuickTime and make a new audio recording. But that's kind of stilted and staged because you're trying to, do it for a recording. So you're on your best behavior. What you sound like when you're in the heat of a conversation is a little bit of a different story. Next question.
David Brady in New York City. Is it possible to animate transitions between single cam and super source using just an ATEM? And if so, how is it done?
Jason Beisch.
If by just an ATEM, you mean just an ATEM and a super cool app, I suppose you could program this in as a macro, but I wouldn't go there. John Barker, friend of the show, has an incredible app called H2R Layouts. And what it allows you to do is set up these pre-configured SuperSource setups and then just animate between them in real time. So not technically just an ATEM, but I believe you probably should be able to export those and then turn them into a macro.
Chris?
Yeah, there's two things, David. So sometimes a single cam is actually a super source type setup where one of the images is just full screen. So it's not really a single camera, but it's single camera adjacent. It identifies as a single camera, if you will. Also, I just want to say, I think this practice of animating between a single box and two boxes, or two boxes and three boxes, or bringing this guy sliding, I hate it. I hate every bit of it, and it just cut. That's all you need to do. Well, what just happened? Mickey just popped up on screen. Anyway, I hate all the animated transitions. Hate them with a passion.
Mickey?
Yeah, I agree with both Jason and Chris. Mix Effect does it, as well as the other app from John Barker. You can animate, you can have, within a super source, have box one be, or the single person box be full, cover up the entire screen, and then animate the other boxes just off the frame. Then when you need to go into multiple boxes, then animate all of them into their proper positions. But yeah, so tiring to see animating between DVEs or boxes. That's so. It tells me something about the production or the director when they do that.
Yeah, and there's also a difference between using it every single time you make a change versus having a lot of intention behind why I want to do it for that specific time. It's like sound effects or really big transitions and presentations.
When I introduce a new speaker.
Right.
That makes sense.
Right.
The rest of it
just something's happening.
Cut.
There's a lot of, it's funny, sometimes we get onto a topic and we'll get, like Vic says, come on, Fenwick, tell us how you really feel. But there's also a tremendous amount of conversation that's going on there about the last couple of questions. We're still talking about ProdCom. We're still talking about doing a mic test in your room. And what it really goes to show is that if you're watching us on YouTube, while we're happy you're here, you're missing out on half the show. We are on every single morning at 7 a.m. Pacific in Makana, and that's your chance to not only ask questions in real time, but also you can vote on what gets answered, and you can connect with people in the chat. We've got smart, engaged people in the chat who are very opinionated, very passionate, and there's a ton of discussion that's going on behind the scenes. And I encourage everybody to don't just watch our office hours. Go ahead, be a part of it. Go to officehours.global/join. Sign up for the email there, and then you'll get all the links on how to be on the inside track. Next question.
Alton Christensen in New York City says a friend revived a portable Sony DAT recorder and would like to use it again. He has a box of new tapes still in their wrappers, bought about 35 years ago. Is it advisable to use those tapes? And if not, is there a reputable source for newer ones?
Bill?
Be careful here. And the reason I'm saying that is that DAT was a helical scan format like video tape recorders and things like that. Because there's a little spinning head there at an angle that is going very, very, very fast. If there's anything wrong with the binder of the median, those heads get clogged super fast. And old tapes notoriously run even once through a helical scan system can clog it up. If you're going to try it, make sure you have head cleaning stuff available. You're going to try to use this in production. Absolutely not. It'll be a fun thing to play with, but I wouldn't go near this for any kind of work with a 150-foot pole. And I'm not sure if anybody's making DAT tapes anymore, probably offshore somewhere in Russia if they are.
Jeff?
Yeah, I would want to know why. your friend is doing this, but my initial reaction is it is as advisable to use those tapes as it is to use a DAT recorder, which is not at all. So go for it. I mean, worst case scenario, the tape just starts flying out in the air and you have like a big tape confetti party. As mentioned, I wouldn't use this, real time for any production work. You should assume it's going to fail. I looked real quick, I don't see any new tapes, I don't believe, being sold. And the ones that you can find are probably out of that same box and they're ridiculously expensive. So the whole idea sounds pretty bad unless it is just purely for fun and then knock yourself out.
Courtney?
I have a couple of these D3s recorders, and none of them work anymore. I might point out they stopped making those transports about 25 years ago. They stopped making the transports about 5 years before they stopped making the recorders. So you could not replace the transports with the go bad. Each transport, because it has to pull the tape out of the little teeny cartridge and wrap it around a spinning head inside that little tiny recorder. There's so many moving parts to open the cassette, pull the tape out, wrap it around a 1-inch diameter spinning head as opposed to the 2-inch diameter spinning heads that was in the larger rack mount type machines. You're just asking for trouble. They stopped making the tapes years ago, and they stopped making the transports about 5 years before that. So, good luck on getting those tapes to even load into the DAT machine, much less track correctly and reproduce their 16-bit loveliness.
Jeff?
I used to use National Recording Supplies, tapes.com as a supplier. Their website is their domain is up for sale. Their last Facebook post is more than 10 years old. So no, you're not going to find any new tapes. I've got several boxes that are probably only 25 years old if you'd like to purchase those.
Ooh, newer models, 10 years newer. Chris?
I think this is all part of the trend of people wanting to go and use old equipment because it has that warm analog sort of feel. Oh, wait a second. DAT. No, never mind. I retract my. Never mind. I'm done.
Next question.
Next one comes in from Craig McFarland in Boston. Will the Netflix Spotify deal incent more podcasts to add video and consider content that has a longer shelf life? And he's got a link to the story.
Jeff?
Yeah, this is interesting. And as far as, longer shelf life, evergreen, I'll pull up the announcement here real quick. If you notice, and there's a list here of some of the titles that are going to be a part of this, a lot of them are sports, so obviously not evergreen, long shelf life. I think those are really just two different categories, right? Things that are evergreen have a longer shelf life, and things that are, current events, and they both have an audience and a purpose. But it's great that it gets more people thinking about video. And yes, I think most podcasts should be including video, but it is fascinating. I heard a podcast that I listened to just the other day. It's an audio podcast, and I heard them going on about how silly video is. This is a podcast. And now, granted, these folks come from a radio background, so they think that way in audio, and they can't even conceive of how a podcast listener might also want a video element to that. So it seems like there's still firm camps on both sides of that debate, but I think it's a good thing.
Courtney?
Yeah, when streaming first came around, a lot of radio stations put cameras in their control rooms for talk radio and even music radio, and started streaming inside the control room because it became more interesting to watch behind the scenes. And I think the main reason that a podcaster would want to add video to their normally audio podcast is for YouTube distribution, because to get in someone's YouTube subscriptions is probably much more lucrative than a deal with Netflix, where you might be able to access their podcast on Netflix. YouTube has a much broader coverage and a much higher repeat subscription rate.
And that, I think, is the real story, is that Netflix they have two problems. One of them is that one of their biggest competitors, the one who's taking all of the views is YouTube. And it's all produced by individuals who, some of them have budget, but they're funding it themselves some other way. Netflix, in the meantime, is having to put a ton of their own money up to try and produce long-form narrative content or get into live, both of which are more expensive than when somebody else made it and you're just hosting it. The other part of it is it's kind of like it's similar to when Spotify started to do podcasting in the first place, where they said we are going to save money because we don't have to pay royalties. People are still going to spend time in our app and have a relationship with us, but we're not having to pay, an additional paltry sum to whatever they pay the artists. To me, it muddies the waters. I mean, it's still funny that we call it podcasting. This, I haven't used this in a very long time, but sure enough, this was when video podcasts came out. This was the screen that you watched it on, this little 320 tiny little screen. Now podcasting is kind of, you have purists who say, a podcast can only be audio and that. I agree. I enjoy listening to podcasts. I put it on in the background, but that language has evolved into just being a medium of saying this is longer form talk content where there's a conversation and there is a certain compelling element when there's video, when there's something to show. I like on this show, for instance, even though it's not a podcast, the way that most people describe it when they say it's like, oh, I saw you on a podcast. And it's like, okay. So at some point we're going to have to get over the being a language purist about it. But to loop it back into Netflix and Spotify, I think it is a little wild. Go ahead, Chris.
I don't think it has anything to do with language. I think it is it's a technology. It's interesting. I find it frustrating. I find it dumb that people who have a YouTube show call it a podcast. Why is it a podcast? What does the word mean? I think we have to come to we've brought this up before in the past and we just glaze over it and just, I guess you get to call anything a podcast. I've been watching that podcast on Netflix. It's called Ozark. It's about Jason Bateman and his wife, Laura Linney. It's a great podcast. You should check out that podcast. I'm really enjoying it.
And then at the end of the show, it's like, stay tuned for it's now
the next episode of our podcast.
Instead of being a QR code to like see the podcast of behind the scenes that you have to go to somewhere else, now it's just like, it's almost like the way that HBO does it, where it's like, stay tuned after the show for more behind the scenes. Jeff?
Yeah, I mean, language does evolve. Yes, it used to mean a specific technology. And while that still applies, it by no means only means the technology. I think in common language today, it kind of implies a conversation, as opposed to a scripted show, a production, all the above. It is some form of either one person monologuing, which can be boring, or usually two or more people just having a discussion. And it also, quite frankly, to me, denotes probably going to be questionable quality, whether it's just audio or not. It will also include someone just talking into their phone or two people talking into one mic placed 4 feet away from them. I mean, all of the above. And whether or not it includes video almost doesn't seem to matter in terms of the terminology.
And John Wallace brings up a good point. Spotify is no longer a distribution platform for music. It's an ad platform. They don't know video, so now they can embed their ads into video, played on a service that has distribution and understands video. I think that's probably spot on. And just remember, when you're in Pennsylvania, you stop on the turnpike at the service plaza for a soda, and by the time you're in Indiana, you are stopping at the Oasis on the toll road for a pop. It's just different strokes. Next question.
Caleb Groom in Pinehurst, North Carolina. I watched the April 25th office hours show where the Zoom team did the first Zoom Graphics Toolkit demo. Since then, have any of the members of the panel used it and can share their experience?
Go ahead, Jason.
I haven't used it for anything professional, but I have really played around with it, and it is every bit as cool as it looked.
Yeah, I'm super excited. So I played with it a little bit when it was in beta, and I got to see it, a little preview of it back at NAB in one of those little cabanas back there. But I am super excited. I have the first show that I am going to use it for is going to be next month, and it's using the Zoom is running the event, but then I'm going to try and see if I can plumb in the stuff for Graphics Toolkit, because I think it's going to give that event an extra edge that I wouldn't otherwise be able to do with a limited resourced crew. If you've got questions and you are watching after the fact, you're not in Makani, you can ask them 24/7 at askofficehours.global. That's askofficehours.global. There's nothing to log into, nothing to sign up for. Just go to askofficehours.global, put in your name, put in your question, and we'll start filtering those in on the next show. Next question.
Paul Wallace in Austin, Texas is up next with this one. How is Kilohearts Filter Table plugin changing the game for dynamic filtering in mixes, especially for media professionals handling high-res audio on platforms like Tidal?
Mickey?
So yeah, I was taking a look at this earlier and even watched and listened to a bunch of their samples. Well, frankly, like, I don't see how it's changing the game. It seems to me like just another modulation and dynamics plugin, and I don't know how it specifically relates to Tidal. Yeah, it's just another plugin dime a dozen.
Next question.
Next one is a QR code response this morning. David in Santa Rosa, California says, what makes the biggest improvement in audio quality? A more expensive mic, the right choice or type of mic, or an acoustically treated room? And if I wanted to make the biggest noticeable impact to my recordings, which one of these should I consider first?
Jeff?
First of all, any mic in the right place. Position of the mic is going to trump, and then probably beyond that, acoustics of the room. And then you're going to get down to the type of mic, and then finally which actual mic you purchase. So usage matters more than gear.
Mickey?
Yeah, I would say the earlier in the input chain, the bigger an impact it would have on the recording. So starting with the source of the sound that you're trying to capture, be it, like, I don't know if you're trying to capture speech or someone's like a vocal or a guitar. If someone can't sing and you're trying to capture that, no matter what mic you choose, it's going to sound bad, unless you're actually trying to capture someone who sounds out of tune. Same thing with whatever instrument you may be trying to capture, or if someone isn't projecting or has a funny sounding voice, no matter what you do, the recording is going to sound funny. So start from there. Next would be the recording environment. That coupled along with the mic placement, because that plays a lot in terms of how much of the recording environment you're capturing. And then you get to the mic, and then everything down the chain, your preamp, your channel strip, if you have dynamics happening in your channel strip, or EQ, those are further down the line, so have less of an impact, no matter even if you go from, like, say, an SSL versus a universal audio channel strip, those would have less impacts on the recording than the actual, like, source of the sound.
Mickey just took fix it in pre to a whole new level. Now it's like fix it in your vocal cords, just like get way back there. Go ahead, Bill.
I just for my own amusement, I often think of sound in the terms of cooking. And so, like, let's say I wanted to sit down and eat a really good fish dinner, and I said to myself, okay, so what's important? Well, the fish is important. I don't want a spoiled fish. No matter what I do after that, that's going to make a lousy meal. How am I going to cook the fish? Well, if I overcook it and burn it, that's going to mess up the meal. And what about the sauce that I'm going to put on it because I enjoy that? What if it's way too salty? That's going to spoil it. I guess my point here is to get a good dinner on the table, you want to balance all those quality steps so that you don't make a big mistake in any of them. And I kind of think about recording of the voice or recording through microphones as the same thing. It's not, they're all important to a certain degree. You can take things that are done really well in the first two stages and you can ruin them in the last stage. And you can take things in the earlier stages, as Mickey was suggesting, and then no matter what you do after that, you're still going to have a less than ideal result because you haven't gotten all the stages right. So it's always, to me, going to be a balance. You put a great mic and a clean chain in front of a lousy performer, all you get is a really good recording of a lousy performance. And that's always going to be true in my heart.
Courtney.
Yeah, as Mickey always says, it depends. It depends on what you're recording. Are you recording voices? Are you recording music? I also agree that the microphone is important because it's the starting point in your capture chain. And if you have a mic with a lot of self noise, you're going to have to deal with that all the way down the chain. And if it has a low output, you're going to have to amplify it more in the preamp, and that means you're going to bring up the self noise in the microphone. So bear that in mind. Also, expense doesn't necessarily relate to quality of the sound because there are three of us here on the panel that are using under $200 microphones that sound quite good. So, and once you get above about the $300 condenser microphone price or good dynamic price, you're starting to pay more for the reputation of the mic producer than the quality of the microphone. Because once you get above that price, really, a $3,000 microphone can sound almost identical to a $300 microphone if they're made with care and if they choose their components wisely. As far as the room treatment goes, there's two things to consider: sound isolation and sound treatment. Almost all recording studios have great sound isolation up to floating rooms within rooms, but they have variable acoustical treatment so that they can change the liveliness of that room to be completely dead, or they have panels that they can flip over that are reflective so they can add some degree of liveliness to that room, which is a good thing if you're recording music, live music particularly, of a group. So those are things to consider depending upon the type of music or type of sounds you're going to be recording.
Jeff?
Yeah, as Courtney pointed out, first, it really does matter what we're recording, completely different choices if you're talking about a band versus, again, a podcaster, for example, or someone on a panel just talking, presenting. In voiceover, the rule of thumb is first deal with room treatment. If you have $1,000 to spend, spend $800 on room treatment and $200 on a mic, because most people's instinct or gut reaction is to do the opposite, buy phenomenal mic, and then they're, practically like in their marble bathroom and wonder why, the audio still doesn't sound great with this super expensive microphone. And you'll definitely have much better results. I've done a recording just on my phone in my booth here, and it sounds okay, sounds good. Compared to taking really good stuff out in a horrible room, it sounds horrible.
Next question.
Next one comes to us from Andy Kokendorfer in Viera, Florida. Does Bluetooth 5.3 improve audio connection stability? Some lousy Bluetooth frequency response, or better than prior Bluetooth?
Jason?
No.
So
definitive.
Yeah, 5.2 and 5.3 did start to, they are advertising that they do a better job of connection stability and reliability. You might get better distance, you might get fewer dropouts. But the audio codec side of it is, I don't know, I think it was 5 or 6 years ago, there was the LHDC or whatever, the new audio codec that could do 24/192, but you need a sender and a receiver that are both supporting that, so it's not very widespread. I remember I had a terrible time years ago, right when aptX HD came out. I had bought a pair of wireless headphones that had aptX HD, and it was describing how good the quality was going to be, and then to get my Mac to broadcast in aptX HD, I had to like install Xcode and go into a Bluetooth developer tool and specifically click something. It was a total headache. So
you're kind of proving my point. Bluetooth is not a standard. It's an amalgam of standards that are the mishmash and kind of like, weird agreed upon thing, just like, Wi-Fi is agreed upon as a codified standard by a group of companies, but it's not, it's really just kind of an agreement.
So if you want your top tier quality, get yourself a wire. If you are enjoying office hours, there are some ways that you can help us. You can, of course, like and subscribe to the channel on YouTube. We also have lots of volunteer opportunities around, not only during the show, but also around the show. There's folks who are not only making us look and sound good and making sure that you get a top quality production. There's also a whole team of people that is just trying to figure out how do we get more panelists involved? What do we want to talk about on our special shows? We've got our evening shows on Mondays and Thursdays, so there's a ton of stuff going on. And finally, you can help keep the show running and keep the lights on by contributing financially at officehours.global/donate. We are a nonprofit, and we do appreciate it when folks go up there. It's easy to do. Just go to officehours.global/donate, and we sure do appreciate it. Next question.
Next question from Paul Wallace in Austin, Texas. How is the Beetlecrab Tempera revolutionizing granular sampling? That was fun to say. Granular sampling workflows for sound designers creating immersive soundscapes in film and game audio. And he's got a link to the Beetlecrab Tempera website.
Mickey?
So yeah, I was taking a look at this earlier. It seems to be a sampler that combines multiple types of samplers and controllers in one. And if we take a look at it here, it looks like, I'm not entirely sure, it looks like some sort of capacitive touch interface, which for something that is typically used to perform live is not a great thing to have. I'm not entirely sure how it would be revolutionizing the sampling workflows. But it's just another tool. There are many types of samplers. This is just one of them.
Courtney.
Yeah, judging from the interface, I would say for sound designers who like to, craft a sound over, using their workstation over a period of times of applying different filters and different dynamics, something like this as Mickey said, looks like it's designed more for live performance using sampled sounds. Because once you get something you like, repeatability becomes a question, and will you be able to repeat that same combination of moving my finger left, right, and down and around in a circle, time after time, or to capture that sound on tape? I prefer to craft something a piece at a time and build it up rather than trying to perform it for a particular soundtrack.
Yeah, and I've never used the Beetlecrab tempura, but it is a little chilly today, so I might go get some soft shell crab tempura, a big old thing of broth, and that's going to set me straight. Next question.
Sounds tastier. Wayne Fox in Sydney, Australia, New South Wales says Electron apps using private macOS Tahoe APIs are causing system slowdowns. Furbo.org offers a free tool to detect outdated Electron apps so that you can avoid them until updated. Panel to discuss.
Jeff.
I've never been a fan of Electron apps. To me, it just screams that you're not committed to having an app, you're too lazy or don't have the budget to do so. So it's kind of that thing that if you're not going to do it right, I'd rather you not do it at all. And quite frankly, almost none of the ones I've seen really have a purpose to be an app. In other words, by definition, they already exist as a web app. They are a web app, and we're just kind of wrapping it in this thing to pretend it's a application, but rarely does it add functionality that necessitates an application. And so all you're doing is introducing these problems. Again, you're wrapping the website container, so just use the website. So, I almost say, you're getting what you ask for if you are running these and end up with problems. So it's great that there's a tool, if that does work, in fact, to detect them. Great. Uninstall anything that comes up showing that it's slowing down your system and go to the web app instead.
Jason?
So let's take Chromium, okay, and then just install Chromium again, but don't let it update with the rest of the Chrome, the browser that you have, and just let it there and leave it at the mercy of the developer that couldn't be bothered to set up their own app, and then wonder what's wrong. Bad idea.
And there are some apps. I mean, I think 1Password and Discord. Discord's okay, although when it updates 8 times every time I launch it, it's a little annoying. But I think 1Password does a pretty good job. I agree that the apps are running the best when they're designed for the platform and they're taking advantage of all of the things. And you can feel all of the little compromises when you open up an Electron app. What's worse is when you have your a brand new computer, you've updated maybe a little aggressively for a production machine and to be on Tahoe already, but still you have a plenty fast machine that is then getting caught by all these little hitches. It's why we test. It's why we make sure that we've got a backup machine that we're doing a dry run on before we put it on anything that matters. Or you could just be a rebel like me and say, I'm going to fall on all the swords and get hit by all the arrows or whatever the analogy is, because part of my job is I've got a machine that is on a more stable release. It's on an older channel, but I'm still going to try and push the envelope with the new stuff because I need to have the problems before somebody else has the problems, because I'm the one that's going to get asked about the problems. So if I don't know how to navigate those waters, then I'm not as valuable in that situation. Jeff?
Yeah, I'll just add real quick, and I'm showing on screen. Wayne gave us in the chat the output of a test he ran, which shows that 95% of the apps that are Electron apps are failing. In other words, they're slowing down your system. They have bad calls. That includes Discord, and that includes Slack is okay, but Electron themselves, Dropbox. I will say, for example, I've never installed the Discord app on my system. I have a tab open in my browser, and it works just fine. Same, by the way, with Dropbox. Now, I'm not syncing, but same with Dropbox. If I need files, I open the tab. So you don't unnecessarily introduce these problems unless there's real specific functionality that you only get by quote-unquote installing the app version of this thing. There's no need for that, and it's only going to cause you problems. Have less stuff that need to be updated.
Courtney?
And finally, switch to Windows. You can get cheap machines. Electron's cross-platform. Runs pretty stably on Windows.
Well, then none of your apps work. I mean, that's even worse.
Windows doesn't
You're gonna have the
work
same
on the
problem.
previous operating systems, but the new operating system, I'm still running software I wrote 25 years ago in the latest version of Windows 11. Do that.
This beautiful cross-platform thing carries the problems over to all the platforms.
Yeah, I love it when I downloaded a brand new copy, and this is the Mac version of the app, but I downloaded a brand new copy of like Office or something onto a machine that I was setting up the other day. And then the first time I opened up Excel, it said, hey, Excel has updates. It needs updates. And I said, what do you mean it needs updates? I just installed it. Okay. Deep breath. Thank you, everyone, for being here today. Thank you. We had an awesome panel today. Thank you so much for coming in and sharing your life experience, helping us all get smarter and laugh a little along the way. It's always great to see the faces from all around the world coming in to help make us all smarter. To our back-end crew, you're so great. You're the foundation of everything that we're doing. And I can't properly articulate how spoiled it is, how spoiled I feel to get to come in and do this show, because everything's just set up for me. And you make it so easy for us to come in and contribute. But also, if it weren't for you, we wouldn't be able to keep this community going forward. Also, thanks to our producers for asking such great questions today. We ended up with quite a few that we didn't get to as we were getting into the discussion. So if you ask those questions in Makana, you can go up into your notes in the little hamburger menu in the upper right, and there's a questions tab. You can submit them next time you're watching. And then if you did it via the QR code, those will work their way in automatically or automagically, however you like to say that. over the next couple shows. If we would have had to do this in person today, I'd go around and ask all these questions, that'd be our Slalom traversal. It's 14,000 miles, 23,000 kilometers, and that's 113 million bananas for scale. See you in after hours. The Electron detector. I'm going to run this. I don't know if I have any Electron apps on this machine.
Sorry we didn't get to the question about an Atmos workstation in the back of your Mercedes Maybach. That sounds like the most dangerous thing.
You know what? I'm like, oh boy. Okay, here we go. I know I'm going to start a flame war, but luckily it's only the last 2 minutes.
Hey, Jeff Keithley had an edit system in the back of his Tesla, so who knows?
He had a control room.
I think spatial audio, I've been in a car that has been able to take Atmos and put it into all the different corners of the car. It's neat.
Yeah, but you don't want to be editing.
You don't want to be editing
position of your, of that car chase scene and while someone's.
What could possibly go wrong? You hear sirens coming from behind you.